Worcester has been booming over the last decade or so, but not everyone is sticking around. In fact, more and more residents are deciding to pack up and leave Worcester altogether. In this video, we're going to dive into the top 5 reasons why people are leaving Worcester. Now, before we get into these top 5 reasons, I want to say the data I have collected, some of it is from a few years ago, and it might be out of date at this point in time. I did a lot of research for this video, and sometimes you just can't find updated data as much as you would like. With that said, let's get into the first reason, which is rising housing costs. Rising housing costs, you could go to any town pretty much in America over the last 5 years and point towards a reason for people leaving that town because of the rising housing cost. Worcester is no different. So I'm going to be looking at my computer a lot because I have all my notes on here and I do not want to miss anything. So from 2015 to 2022, the average rents in Worcester surged from around $1,000 to $1,800. So that's an increase of 80% in the span of 7 years. And Forbes actually ranked Worcester in 2024 as the third most competitive rental market in the entire country. So Worcester is very difficult to get into to find a rental, especially at the rent that a lot of people are looking for, the rent per month. With rental prices increasing, guess what else increased? The price of a home, the price to buy a single family, to buy a condo, to buy a multifamily. All of those have increased. Ever since COVID, since the pandemic began, that's only accelerated. So you're gonna see a graphic pop up on the screen. It's a screenshot of MLS data for single family properties in Worcester from 2021 to 2025, as of August 18th, 2025. So August 18th, 2021, you'll see the price of a single family home on average was roughly it was a little over $357,000 for a single family home. And as of today, August 18th, 2025, that price went up to $481,000-ish for a single family home in Worcester. Average price, that's not median price. So that's an increase, what, 35%? I'd have to double check that. You might see something pop up on the screen of the actual percentage, how much it went up. But an increase of $124,000 increase in the span of 4 years. 4 years. And that was when rates were lower. Now rates are where rates are. Rent's gone up considerably. Home prices have gone up considerably in Worcester. This is getting to the point where some people just, they can't afford those prices and they have to move on, go out west to Massachusetts or go to an entirely different state. I'm going to touch on this maybe in another reason or another point as well, but there's simply not enough housing being built. Massachusetts is having this problem as a whole. Worcester is the second biggest city in Massachusetts. There needs to be more housing built in Worcester so it can accommodate more residents to live in Worcester. The city has actually added residents in the last decade plus. You know, it's roughly 25,000 as of the last available data. Some of you watching this might actually have better data than that. You might have a more accurate representation of how many people have actually entered the city and started living in Worcester. But 25,000, we're going to stick with that. Not enough housing has been built for those added residents. I think it was, what, 10,000? I got the data somewhere else, which I'll touch on again. Anyway, you're going to see a screenshot on the screen of kind of what I'm talking about here. So 25,000 residents moved to the city and around like 10,000 units have been available or built. I don't know. I'm getting all my data mixed up right now, but you would have seen the screenshot by now. Coming off of that point, just an influx of people from greater Boston have moved to Worcester because it's more affordable than the suburbs of Boston. And Worcester is still not too far from Boston. So if you're working in Boston, you might be willing to make that commute to Boston itself, or maybe you're 100% remote and Worcester is just the more affordable option for you. If you're by yourself living in Worcester, maybe you have a family. It's the more affordable option. That has been accelerated because of COVID, and the housing is very tight for these new residents that have moved to Worcester. Okay, number 2, high cost of living. I mentioned the rentals. It surged of 80% in those 7 years, and that's up until 2022. Since 2022, rent's gone up even a little bit more. A lot of longtime residents aren't able to afford Worcester in this day and age. That's the sad truth. Some of you watching this, maybe you've experienced that firsthand. There was an article, which you should see on the screen, where it mentioned half of Worcester residents are cost burdened, meaning they pay at least 30% of their income on rent and utilities. The general rule of thumb is to keep that number below 30% of your income and utilities. But some people simply have no choice because their wages, their income aren't keeping up with the appreciation of rental prices. or home prices in general. So that's a huge issue that Worcester's been facing. Now, this data, these numbers I'm going to be talking about here is from a couple years ago, so this might be even slightly out of date, but it gets the point across of the high cost of living. A family of four needed roughly $8,600 a month to live in Worcester. I think that was as of like 2023. And a single person moving to Worcester would need roughly $3,700 a month to live in Worcester itself. So that's just that's crazy. So you need pretty much $50,000 a year as a single person to live in Worcester and to make it, to survive, basically. You know, that's just you factoring in your rent prices, your utilities. That's not including grocery prices, getting gas for your car, so on and so forth. And this is going to come as a surprise to pretty much no one, but the majority of residents that leave Massachusetts cite the reason for leaving because of the high cost of living and the high cost of housing. Massachusetts, known as one of the most expensive states to live in, I don't think anyone doesn't disagree with that. It's very pricey to live in Massachusetts. You know, you got the housing prices, you got Massachusetts taxes, just grocery prices, like I just mentioned. Grocery prices in general, not only in Mass, but the rest of the country have gone up over the last couple of years because of inflation. And groceries to this day are still more expensive than they were. Okay, number 3, limited affordable housing availability. I've already kind of touched on this. We're gonna get into some more numbers here. So this data is from some of my research I've done. Worcester's housing stock currently has only 13.5% roughly of units considered affordable for low to moderate income households, which is lower than Boston and Springfield. Boston was at 21% and Springfield is at 16%. So that's something Worcester, the city itself, is trying to address. They've been they started implementing plans as of a couple years ago. From the research I've done, I looked into that a little bit. I might put a screenshot on the screen if I can find that article and find that paragraph. But Massachusetts as a whole, not just Worcester, also struggles with public housing affordability and public housing inefficiencies. This data is from a year or two ago, I think. There's about 184,000 applicants on wait list to get into some of this housing I just mentioned. Thousands of subsidized units remained vacant due to mismanagement, repairs backlog, and administrative issues. So all those applicants were on wait lists for however long, and they're just wondering what's going to happen next, wondering if they're actually going to be able to get a housing unit to live in. And some of them, to this day, don't know. It's really just a tough situation. I don't have the answer to the question. The state's trying to address this. The city's trying to address this. That's all on the government. They're gonna do what they need to do at some point in time, you would think, right? Who knows though. And then another report noted that 65% of the city's rental households earn less than $50,000 per year. And I just mentioned that you need, $3,700 a month as a single person to live in Worcester. So 65% of the city's rental households earn less than that $50,000 per year, and the number of market rate units permitted for development significantly outnumbers affordable units in the pipeline. It's just one thing after another. It's just the high cost of living, the high cost of housing. It's just boom, 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 boom. People just can't keep up with it. People got to move somewhere else completely in order to make ends meet. Mass Inc. also indicated that gateway cities across Massachusetts, including Worcester, need to produce a combined total of 83,000 new housing units over the next decade to prevent further rent and price escalation. Now that's no easy task, because housing being built across Massachusetts hasn't been that high in the last decade or so. It's been kind of stagnant, not doing much, and we've needed more. Everyone knows we need more housing to be built. It's just a matter of doing it. Okay, the 4th reason, we're done with the high cost of living, the depressing stuff, and this is still, depends on the person for this upcoming one, but traffic congestion and transportation limitations. Every mid to major city is going to have traffic issues. That's known to every single person. It comes down to you and your personal preferences, if you mind the traffic or if you don't mind the traffic. If you just go into expecting that there's going to be traffic, you're going to be better off. But Worcester, the city scored a 34 out of 100 on transit access, meaning most households need a car to get around the city. They do have buses, they have a bus system. The walkable score is decent. The biking score was but most households do need a car in order to get from one place to another in Worcester. Traffic on 290 in Worcester at rush hour, it can be brutal. Thankfully, I'm not on 290 at rush hour. that often in Worcester. I remember a couple times I have been, oh my goodness, I sat there for like 60 minutes one time, moved maybe a mile. I don't know, it's crazy sometimes. It really depends on what's going on in the city, especially on a Friday afternoon at like 4 o'clock. It's bad. It can get bad. So it depends how much you're willing to put up with that. So traffic congestion and transportation limitations is number 4. Number 5 is job market dynamics and talent outflow. I found this very interesting, and it makes sense. If you're watching this, you know somewhat about Worcester, I'm guessing, or maybe you know nothing about Worcester, you think about moving to the area. Worcester has several colleges and universities, some very good colleges and universities. You got WPI, you got Clark, you got Worcester State, you got multiple colleges and universities. But a lot of students, after they graduate, leave Worcester for better opportunities elsewhere. The housing cost and the student debt that these graduates ensue and would have to navigate isn't worth it to stay in Worcester for a lower paying job than they can get elsewhere for the same job that they want. That's why so many people that graduate from school in Worcester move out east to Boston, or they move out of the state entirely for other opportunities. Worcester could have the same job they're looking for, but the pay is not nearly as much as it would be if they went out to Boston or maybe to another major city somewhere else altogether. And a lot of people, I went through this Reddit thread, a lot of people complained about the lack of engineering jobs in Worcester, even though they went to school at like WPI for engineering, and Worcester just simply doesn't have those jobs available, or more options for those jobs available than they would in many other places. So hence, they leave Worcester for those opportunities. Another Reddit post from a couple people, there's just better quality of life for certain people elsewhere, and they just don't think Worcester offers that for them in their personal situation. For you, it might be different. It just comes down to the lack of very few good jobs for the young people at growing dynamic companies. Worcester's limited in that regard for these people's personal preferences. If you go to Boston, there's so many more opportunities out in Boston or another major city. Worcester simply does not have that as of this moment in time, to the degree that people want them to have it. So to sum up, the 5th point, it's not just housing, it's the lack of opportunity, which is why people leave Worcester. Now, if you go to Worcester for healthcare, being a nurse or a doctor, much more of those options than for some other people, for some other industries. You got UMass Memorial, you got St. Vincent's Hospital. There's a lot of healthcare jobs in Worcester, or healthcare potential possibilities in Worcester if you work in healthcare. So to wrap it all up, that's why people are leaving Worcester, the 5 reasons. I'll just touch on them briefly again. So number 1, rising housing cost. Number 2, high cost of living. 3, limited affordable housing availability. 4, traffic congestion and transportation limitations. And 5, job market dynamics and talent outflow. Those are the 5 reasons why people are leaving Worcester. If you're currently living in Worcester, are these challenges enough for you to leave Worcester altogether? Or do the pros outweigh the cons for you? Please let me know in the comments down below what you think. I actually just did a previous video. I might link it here, put it down in the description as well. The best places to live in Massachusetts according to ChatGPT. I had 10 towns on that list. So if you're thinking about moving out of Worcester, check out that video. Even though that list is from ChatGPT, it was just a fun experience I wanted to do. There's some affordable options and there's some more pricey options for towns in that video. So check that out. And down in the description, I also have first-time home buyer guide and a seller guide for sellers on how to best position your home to be sold. So thank you so much, and I will see you on the next video.